Yes, indeed. We are back. Welcome to the American Scouser TV Thursday night podcast, or as the cool kids were calling it before the World Cup break, Astafatinapa. And we are joined today by Scott, who is first time with us tonight. How are you, Scott?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's good to see you guys. Happy to be back on the shows.
Awesome stuff. We have Jamie and Saoirse, isn't it?
Seriously, yeah, we got another first timer here.
Yeah, another first timer here. Yeah, more, as we said, more hair than both me and Scott put together. We're so jealous. And also without last but not least to mention the awesome Jamie. How are you, Jamie?
Yeah, doing well, lads. It's been a minute. I've had my hands full, quite literally. I'm going to pass her off. She's nice and peaceful right now. So, mommy's here to take care of her, and
you're going to be shouting soon. And you're going to be shouting soon, isn't
it? So she.
There we go. You can't beat it, as they say. You can't beat it with a big stick, as we say back home in Dublin. So lots to talk about. Let's get started with the sad news today of who I consider to be the greatest player of all time, Pelé, 82 years old. But for me, my generation at least, he really encapsulated greatness for so long before we ever had a Ronaldo versus Messi debate, before we ever had a George Best or Johan Cruyff. He really was the man, wasn't he, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, a bit older than I am, but you know, we were given homework basically to go and watch these greats, and you know, name a skill move, name a type of goal, and Pelé done it. You know, it was just a clinical finisher, a forward's forward. You know, wasn't all show, all frill and no knickers. Basically, you know, he had a clinicalness about him. You know, there was an all rounder to his game. He could head the ball at right foot, left foot, nimble, powerful, strong. You know, for a small guy, like he was huge in the air, and you know, basically the father of football in America. Really, you know, him and Beckenbauer. Basically, you know, we've got a lot to thank for stateside. But yeah, the goat's goat. You know.
Yeah.
Scott, what are your thoughts on Pelé?
Yeah, I think Jamie hit, you know, the nail on the head. The fact is that, you know, people get into the debate of the GOAT, right? And obviously with Messi winning the World Cup, everyone has, you know, their own opinion. I think that without throwing them maybe that term the GOAT, I will say the most inspirational. He was without a doubt the most inspirational and most influential player, because I think that his quality transcended beyond just on the field. I think that just the development, catching the eye. I can give my little share of story. I was born and raised up in New Jersey, and they used to have the Metro Stars, the New York Metro Stars, and which then turned to New York Red Bulls. I went to the very first New York Red Bulls game. Shakira played at halftime. But what was more important in that game was
she any good?
She was fantastic. Yeah.
Did you watch your hips? Because they don't
lie. That was the only thing. But the ball was brought out by Pele onto the center field, because Pele obviously played with the New York Cosmos in his time in America. And I think that his time in America really, like you said, began just the early stages of development of watching here. And, you know, now you see what it's become, and hopefully continues to be all the way through into 2026 when we host the World Cup. But I think that without a doubt, his legacy will live on greater than I think anything that we're going to see.
I think for me, I always think there's a lot of recency bias about, you know, Messi or Ronaldo or whoever came before them. Zidane or whoever it happens to be, but I think it sometimes gets forgotten that essentially Pelé won Brazil the World Cup at 17 years old. In his first World Cup, literally dominated every game, so much so that in the next one, they kicked him off the pitch and to make sure he didn't do it again, which is what, to me, makes him the greatest, even more than Maradona to an extent, because Maradona was a fantastic player. and an inveterate cokehead. So we never got that kind of scandal with Pele. He was like a good ambassador for the game.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's hard to differentiate. It's hard to compare era to era and things like that. And that's why, obviously Pele had Maradona, Cristiano has Messi, blah blah blah. But like you said, I mean, it is hard to compare Maradona with Pele as well because they were slightly different positions. But imagine, and I know it's hard to do, but imagine Maradona without the drugs. Imagine George Best without the booze.
Oh yeah.
They would inevitably be more firmly in the conversation because, like you said, Pele was the clean cut player. But even in Brazil, they're split on Pele or Garrincha. But the football world is definitely gonna be at a standstill for his funeral, and Brazil as a whole will just be amazing. But I mean, the debate's out there, and I know the term GOAT does get banned around a lot, but for some strange reason, there is heavy debate on whether or not Pele is or was the GOAT, which seems mad to me because the man won 3 World Cups, and ever since then, it's never been done. There's only, there's a list of players on 2. Your likes of Neymar and Mbappe only have the 1, and Messi, of course. But in our lifetime, I don't think, one of my mates called it hubris for me to be even saying things like that, but I don't think it is. In 100, if we live to be 100, that's what, like 20 more World Cups, 15 more World Cups, something like that. I don't think anybody will ever win it 3 times again.
I think just to wrap it up for the Pele part of tonight, I think there's 2 things that strike me. Number one, if somebody does take over the 3 World Cups, it's got to be somebody like Luke Shaw, and it's just going to be embarrassing for everybody. But number 2, I think whatever we think about who's the greatest and who's not the greatest, the one thing we can say about Pele, which is always a feature for me, was he always had a gigantic smile when he played. He just radiated positivity and happiness in playing the beautiful game. And I think he coined that phrase for everybody that we subsequently all used. But he did play the game beautifully and played it more beautifully and possibly one of the most beautiful soccer teams to ever play international football in the Brazil 1970 team. And he'll be sorely missed by all soccer fans, by Brazil, and probably by the makers of Viagra as well, to be fair.
Maybe we can
finally.
I said maybe we can end the Pele conversation with his Facebook posts that his representatives put up after he passed away, and it says, "Inspiration and love marked the journey of the King Pele, who peacefully passed away today. On his journey, enchanted the world with his genuine genius in sport, stopping a war, carried all social works around the world, and spread the most he believed to be the cure of all problems: love, 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 and love forever."
I think that says it all. I think it's poignant and exactly how you would imagine Pele. It's a nice little wrap up. But let's move on to the Liverpool side of things. We have Leicester to come tomorrow. And we just played. Who did we just play? It was a Villa.
It was, yeah.
That's right.
Yes, yeah. I'm so the Christmas time always messes my head up about where we are in the calendar. It's just bizarre. But after a 4-week break, thereabouts, finally back at it. We lost the cup game against Man City, which was disappointing. But a very good end-to-end game. I think it always was going to come down to who scored the last goal as the game went on. But we really looked the business against Villa, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we did. They had their moments, but again, Mings didn't do them any favors. It was just.
Does he ever?
No, he did look a bit shambolic at the back. But yeah, good to see Big Verge getting a strike in. Good to see Mo tapping in, and young Bakitic was brilliant. So definitely the feel good factor is back. Good to have proper football resuming, and yeah, Premier League is back. So happy days.
Scott, what did you think of the performance overall?
I thought that there was definitely a lot of positives. I think individually there were some really, really good games. I think a lot of people were kind of hesitant over seeing Trent's fitness before the game. They weren't quite sure because he missed the City game. And I thought he put in a really, really good performance overall. I think individually speaking, maybe if you don't listen to quite all of the people talking about Nunez overall. Again, somebody that is making a difference. I think individually, a lot of our players were really showing their qualities. Maybe as the game went on, especially towards the middle half of the second half, in the 60th minute, I thought that we were very shaky just because maybe legs getting back into the swing of things and living with, this post mid-season World Cup that hopefully we never see again. I think was very difficult for the first game, but hey, you got to shake the cobwebs off. And obviously we didn't really get it done against City in midweek. So I was pleased to see that we bounced immediately back, with a win, and overall deserved.
Jamie, we've spoken before about Nunez, and we've been fairly, I think, positive about him, but we've always tempered it with, a few observations that may become criticisms down the road. How did you think he played? I think there was a debate about him getting player of the game or something like that. I thought he had a good performance overall, but is he being paid to have good performances, or is he being paid to put the ball in the back of the net?
Oh, he's definitely being paid to put the ball in the back of the net. That's the goal, right?
Literally.
That's the goal, right? Put it in between the white posts. But I think, look, we always knew it was going to be Project Darwin, didn't we? That he was raw talent, and look, I've seen it said and mentioned in a few different places. I think Gali said it as well in our Discord chat. Is that the thing he does well? The things he does well, you can't teach. Finishing, you can improve on. So he's good at creating havoc. He's good at making those runs. He's pacey. He's strong. You can't necessarily teach a lot of that. So I think the debate on whether he was player of the match, man of the match, I'm not sold on, but it is Project Darwin. There's a lot to improve upon, but that raw essence of an absolute baller is there, and once he gets the bit between his teeth, it's all going to kick off.
And Scott, I saw something online. There was a sort of a comparison between Nunez and Suarez. When Suarez joined, he kind of almost had the same kind of thing, didn't he? He was causing a lot of problems, but he was also hitting the post a lot. I believe he almost made a record of hitting the post from shots.
That was the season when we had like 100 shots off the post. Like,
the post, yeah, it was something really, really like that. But then we all know what happened. Then it all kicked into gear for Suarez once he got used to the league. And do you think the same thing will happen for Nunez?
The craziest thing, about Suarez is and obviously it's a soccer fan's nightmare. I think to hear other people talk about this like recency bias, right? You only think about what last happened, So I remember he banged in 2 goals before the World Cup. Everyone said, man, finished product, beautiful, only 22 years of age. He's going to slot in 35 goals a season for us. I think that he's a quality player. And again, like you said, the comparisons to Suarez, I think, are damning and justified, because we brought in Suarez mid-season. He came into a team that relatively, was pretty shit. And when it comes to the talent around him, Suarez really wasn't putting in the goals that we were paying him money. And remember, in that market, that was a justifiable fee for him. In this market, again, I believe it's a justifiable fee for Nunez based on how much crazy money is going around all over the world. It's what you're going to have to pay to get in the striker that you need for your team. And the reality is he's 22 years of age. Like Jamie said, you can't teach him the runs. You can't teach him the desire. You can't teach him the will to get into these positions and miss and keep going. I was personally pleased to just see this almost bullish, almost, chaotic desire to just keep on shooting. And I'm okay with that. we see, Suarez would go in and try to do what he needed to do, score goals. Right now, we have Salah on the team, and he takes the most shots in the league when he can get the chance. And the reality is we want players to be taking those chances. If he wasn't taking those chances, then we wouldn't have this conversation, but then we also wouldn't be getting the goal scoring opportunities that we do. So I feel like people need to kind of take a step back and analyze it as the whole and say, listen, we are getting these positions. We are getting the chances. He will become a better goal scorer. It will just need time.
Jamie, you talk about the chaos that Darwin creates, which he does. I mean, we talked at the very beginning about, a possible Andy Carroll comparison, but the thing about Andy Carroll was always he was just lazy, essentially, wasn't he? Whereas Nunes just never stops, which is a fantastic quality. But do you think his effectiveness is slightly blunted by not having the one player on the field with him at times who can take advantage of that chaos, which is Firmino?
I mean, that's a great question, Micah. Jesus,
That's because I said it.
Why you gotta come with me to the hard ones? Look, I think
I'm easing Scott in. He's new.
No, see, here's the issue. I'm all right with you being like, hey, Darwin Nunez, great hair, yay or nay. Okay, Jamie, on to the next one. Yeah.
Darwin's hair or Bobby's teeth.
Both expensive.
No, I wasn't asking either of you because I know you both pick Darwin's hair.
I would pick his teeth for my hair.
What I think, I mean, Scott kind of hit the nail on the head with the fact that he has got that bullish. Maybe it's the youthful side of exuberance where he just doesn't know when to fail. But it was that opportunity that comes sailing down from 30 yards in the air and he just hits it first time. I thought that, that takes balls to not take a touch and to not let that ball get away from you by maybe trying to take a touch. But no, go ahead. Repeat your question there. What was it about Bobby Firmino?
Well, Firmino drops back and he always seems to occupy space created by other players, and it seems that Nunes would just look a lot better in those kind of games if Firmino was on the field, because he would be mopping up he would be the one in space, creating the danger then.
We've had that kind of issue before where Jota was in form and we were wondering, is there a way to squeeze all four attackers into the lineup, into the starting 11? So I completely get that point, because Bobby is the glue that kind of can make all those situations better, that really does become the lubricant between the midfield and the front two or three or whoever's filling in. But it'd be a real interesting project to see how that experiment came out, because I think with the cool and calmness of Bobby and the chaos of Darwin, it could be really interesting, couldn't it?
I agree, but Scott, do you think maybe in terms of what we saw the other night, I think we had Ox on the left wing starting. He didn't really do much. He does. I think we've talked before. His time may be coming up, that so much so that even Timuchin might have to admit sometimes that he's just not ready for the level anymore. But putting Darwin out there and Firmino dropping into the space in that false nine position, and then Salah causing chaos on the other side, it's tantalizing to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible thought. And I do agree that Bobby can make his own space. I think that he has a gift of just floating in places and almost kind of, going invisible to defense at times. They can't really keep hold of his just movement off the ball. I think Nunez definitely benefits from his own strength and speed to get into positions. And it's almost as if we had the opportunity to put just another attacker like a Bobby in to kind of occupy the attention of a defense, or occupy just the awareness of trying to look over their shoulder into a different space, that Nunez would be able to have way more opportunity to be able to get in and have more space for himself. We saw that time and time again when you had Mane on the left. Back when Mane was playing with our, deadly front three, that was the reason he had so much space, was because you had Bobby Firmino being able to create space. And next thing you know, you had him bombarding down the left wing or cutting into the middle and using that space that Bobby was creating. Definitely Nunez has that in his pocket. And I think that obviously fitness, providing that the rest of our attackers can come in, it'll only be a blessing for him. I think that just right now, being 22 years old and being that kind of focal point for a Liverpool attack is daunting to some people. And, credit to him. He's running with it. He's not turning, his shoulder. He's not getting scared. He's doing the best he can. And yes, the eye test of him missing chances and relatively good chances is hard to watch as a fan. That being said, again, we remind he's 22 years old. The fact that he's making those chances without maybe a third attacking option, somebody better than a current form Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think is only, promising for our fan base.
Moving away from the striker situation and kind of going towards the end of the game with the sub situation, Jamie, we talked a long time ago about whether we would see Keita again. And we did see Keita again. Did he do anything to dispel any thoughts of him just not going to make it here? Or did he look like he wanted, to become a Liverpool player permanently?
Shop window time, isn't it?
Pretty much, wasn't it? It was a shop window performance and a shop window sub almost, wasn't it? Because he was so bland.
Yeah, for me, it's getting to that time of year. It's not so much Felice Naby lad anymore, is it? It's definitely January sales time, and we'll stop with the Christmas puns very shortly, I promise. No, I think the writing's on the wall for him. And listen, we've all been guilty of giving him chance after chance, and he's had chance after chance, and he's possibly spurned chance after chance. So, I think the time's come. Cut our losses, and I know January's not really our time of year to get rid of a lot of players. I know we're light in midfield, but listen, maybe there's another one to come in. I know we'll get on to young Cody Gakpo, but maybe there's another one to come in midfield, and I'm a big fan of giving the youth a chance anyway. And I know we've got plenty of youth there with young Bakitic playing really well, taking his opportunity and getting a goal, which is not really something you would imagine from the young deep line midfielder. But I don't know. I think it's time to go for Naby, and maybe now's the time.
Were you waiting? Because when he got onto the field, I had just this thought in the back of my mind as, he's just gonna pull up. He's gonna pull up. And I just saw it coming. I thought it was gonna happen again, and I just looking at him trying to glide through the grass.
We're too superstitious, the Irish. We can't think like that, because then you can't sell an injured player, can you?
No,
I thought he was gonna pull up and he put his shin guards in.
And listen, I love the guy. I mean, there's very few players that I won't get behind and hope for the best. I think that maybe I am a hopeless romantic or something like that for our players. Maybe until they're out the door, I continue to root for them and want the best for their sake. And every time they go on the field, it's a 10 out of 10. But the reality is, like you said, it wasn't good enough. We've paid quite a large sum for him, and the reality is that the return on the field has been good when he's on the field, but you can't agree that fee was justified when he's playing maybe 3 or 4 games in a row before he goes down.
Jamie, in terms of that though, have we got our value for money even when he has played? Because we've talked about it before. Certainly me, I have high standards for players for that are going to play for Liverpool, that they have to be contributing somehow either to the attack or the defense. But he's such a vanilla player almost, isn't he? He does just enough to look useful, but never enough to take charge of a game. Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, you cast your mind back. How many Naby goals can you remember? I can remember a couple of good bangers. I
can remember a couple of good bangers as well, but that was in my college days when I was drunk.
And you're not talking about sausages.
Or am I?
All right. Listen, the old cliche is you can't get blood from a stone. I think we've squeezed about all the blood we can from Naby's stones. They're bled dry, and I
Maybe that's why he's
honestly,
always injured.
I think we'd be lucky to get 10 million. I honestly would. The old joke was we'd take a bag of chips for him, but yeah,
We take a bag of chips, but at this point, if he leaves in the summer, we're not going to get anything. A bag of chips looks like a great deal, and
yeah, that's it. A
it's
pat in the back and see you later.
yeah,
Especially Luke Shaw.
Maybe that's fair enough too. Maybe that's fair enough too. Who knows? We might need him at some point for the rest of the season. If he doesn't leave in January, I can kind of see that happening.
I think that maybe we're talking about needing him and maybe needing just that reinforcement in energizing the midfield. We have, like you said, the young players like Batchtek to come in and show to make a difference. Obviously, we don't want to be relying on a 19-year-old player to come and do the business. But I do think that there's something to be said about trusting our youth and providing them minutes. And if they can be gaining valuable experience and minutes that maybe aren't in the most, dire importance in the middle of a very important game, something like that, everyone remembers that our favorite, Scouts players all started, when they were 19, giving them minutes. So how are we ever going to create a player like that if you don't give them the chance, if a Naby Keita is, on the field instead of them? So, like you said, maybe time.
I think to move on a little bit, in terms of going from Naby Keita to those young players, Bajcetic did a fantastic job, didn't he? With the goal for a start, but he played really well in the time that he was on the field. Doak is looking like he could be a tasty player coming down the line. Harvey Elliott is just fantastic in general. Curtis Jones could go either way, but we really look healthy, at least in the attacking department going forward, don't we, Jamie?
Yeah, and I mean, look, even at the back, we've got solid players too. We've got a good string of goalkeepers there that are coming up through the ranks. Kanate's pretty old or pretty young, the oldest one of the young bunch, and certainly the most experienced. We do have a quality bit of youth, and that we've always had it, but the pedigree seems to be just getting better and better. And I mean, I know we've all been guilty of hyping these young fellas up somehow too much. Look, we've been through the ringer with a lot of them, Bedward, Burns, and you name it. The list that don't make it is
some
certainly
Sinclairs.
much longer. Yeah, certainly much longer than the list that do.
Yeah.
But the ones that you've just mentioned, Doak from Celtic looks amazing. That turn at the weekend was something else. Harvey looks a real player, and not to mention a loyal Red. We're looking good for the future, and if we can bleed them into getting minutes, like Scott said earlier, I think we're going to get a lot of wise heads on young shoulders.
In terms of the defense, though, we're still in the same boat in regards. I know Tsimikas did well when he came in for Robertson, but Gomez, I think, came on, didn't he, at the end of the Villa game? Didn't really look like it's not a like-for-like replacement. Do we need to start finding maybe somebody in the academy who can do what Trent can do, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Gomez kind of seems like this, makeshift fix. I think that it's weird to say that when the man won a Premier League for us, and it's almost like maybe he's, a jack of all trades, master at none type thing. It almost looks like he has the versatility to be able to kind of put in these places, but obviously, like you said, it's not going to be a like for like. We obviously have, young Ramsey that can come in and start making, a difference and putting in minutes, but clearly it It looks like Klopp wants to make sure that he, gets our style of play or fitness or strength or whatever it may be, that he's just not quite there yet. There's definitely talent in the turn, and the fact is our academy is doing a great job. Even if you look at, obviously Nico Williams hasn't kind of blossomed into what he could be over in Nottingham Forest, but there's space in our development to develop these players, and there's no one better to look up to than Trent when it comes to the style of play that we play. So there's players that are going to come through. I don't think it's something that we plan or maybe should plan on going into the transfer market, because obviously we have other priorities that need to be addressed before. We're going to have, the need for players to come in. Not every one of our defenders is going to stay fit for an entire season, and we've almost been blessed to have that in recent past. So when it comes to minutes being needed, Tsimikas is obviously there on the left. You're going to want to see Calvin Ramsey when we can on the right. Is it alarming that we haven't seen many minutes from him yet? I'm not sure.
Jamie, what do you think?
I mean, look, I heard one of my guys at OLSE Wilmington say he's the new Ben Davies and this, that, and the other, and does he exist and blah, blah, blah. I think there is undoubtedly a player there. He's not a figment of our imaginations. He apparently is a quality player. Maybe he's just being, maybe, the evaluation is that he has had a difficult period with injuries, and we all know the dangers you can get into if you rush certain types of players back in a little too early.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's burnout or what, but maybe he just needs a bit more physical conditioning. Joe Gomez, I'm looking at you, mate.
Yeah.
And, and listen, nothing against Joe, like Scott rightfully said as well. He played amazing in that 1920 season. And a few before that too. Like he's done really well. He seems to be the flavor of the month now, where it's like, he's under the caution. He's not doing so well again. So he's everybody's loving to hate him right now, and maybe some of that stick is rightfully directed at him. But it's a dangerous road you can get down to with injuries at that young stage of your career. So hopefully we can just baby him a little bit, and if we need to use Joe at right back, or if we need to use Milner at right back, or whoever, so be it, until we can get the best out of him, because the last thing you want to do is ruin a player's career before it's even begun.
Yeah.
Do you think sometimes it seems to me, Scott, again, not to beat down Joe Gomez, because he's obviously a fantastic servant to the club.
Mm-hmm.
But when he plays at the fullback position, it's almost like going back to when we had to put Jamie Carragher on the left during the Houllier days. But we had Marcus Babbel or Steve Finnan on the right, which was just such an imbalance in the attack when that combination happened. Do you think we can get away with that, or do you think it's imperative we do find somebody who can do what Trent does?
It's obviously the imbalance is there, right? You're not going to have the same attacking output from Joe Gomez that you will from Trent, or when Trent is off, you're going to have on the other side with Andy Robertson, or even Kostas Tsimikas when he plays there, because he's just as attacking impetus as Robertson is. I don't think that it's imperative that we go and find a like for Trent. I think that we are able to adapt to different styles of players that we have at our disposal. I also think that we are able to groom somebody like Ramsey to be able to play in that style, to develop into what we consider a like for Trent. And the reality is, you're not going to find somebody like him. It's just not going to happen. And if you are looking at somebody of the qualities of him, we're going to pay boatloads for a player that frankly won't get on the pitch. So it's in our best interest to be able to develop that style of player for what we have. And in the meantime, play with a Joe Gomez in right back, play with a James Milner. The unfortunate reality is you're now looking at the 37-year-old currently injured James Milner, and you are looking at the rather injury prone, at least in the past, Joe Gomez. He has done well keeping his fitness, and that's something to be said by our fan base. We don't give him enough respect, and currently kind of getting beyond a lot of those injury problems, and he's done quite well, being at our disposal when we've had a lot of injuries recently in the center back positions and subsequently right back. But it's natural that when you have a different player, you're going to have a different style. I think that we are professional enough to be able to adapt to that and be able to utilize kind of other strengths, maybe give the opportunity for somebody like Henderson to have more space on the right side, somebody like Salah to tuck in and have him play maybe a little bit more close central, maybe a little bit more direct. But to Joe's credit, I will say that him getting up the pitch has looked better. It's been getting more. We've actually seen a couple assists this season from him, if I remember correctly. So the reality is you'll never find a like for Trent. We're going to do the best we can. But even if we were to look for one, it's going to be too expensive.
Now, in terms of looking for players, let's kind of move on to the big news for us this week. We brought in, number one, what seemed to be a much sought after player in Cody Gakpo, but also a player that seemed to be much sought by Manchester United. And if that was the case, it was really sweet, Jamie, wasn't it, to beat them to the punch?
Let's just say I've had a lot of fun on WhatsApp and my messaging apps this week with my friends from back home. It's been quite lively.
But overall, though, Jamie, and then Scott, it is a good acquisition, isn't it? At least on paper.
From what I've read, I didn't watch any of the World Cup, but apparently, from what I've read, played really well. Very impressive. He's the PSV captain at 23 years of age. He's tall. He's strong. He can play in the middle. He can play out wide. He loves the shot from outside the box. It sounds a very great acquisition, and again, just going off what I've read as to why we pipped United to the post.
Is that not an easy answer there, James? Is that because they're crap?
Well, it is easy, but it shouldn't be easy because he's the same agent as Eric Ten Hag.
Yeah, I suppose that.
I don't get why United haven't splashed the cash. If it's only 40 million, if it's only 50 million or whatever, I don't know why. And
well,
the United fans know why, because he's not good enough. He's not good
enough.
Right,
they're saying he's not good enough now, but they were saying, oh well, we already spent 250 million last summer, and if we have to put in the money, they said it will come out of our 230 million treasure chest for next summer. So we can't have that happen.
But a massive club like Man United, you know what I mean? Everybody get your tiny little violins out, get your little and we'll just play.
Jamie, are you saying that they feel sad for having only 190 million to spend next summer instead of 230? Is that the reality of here?
Well, there's only so many times you can buy Paul Pogba back. You know what I'm saying?
To be fair as well, of that 190 million, 135 million of it is Luke Shaw's lunch budget. So they're kind of, their hands are kind of tied. But however, having said that, looking at his stats, he seems to be a 1 and 2 goal scorer, a goal every 2 games thereabouts. But that's in the Dutch league. It doesn't always translate to the English league, and in fact, it probably won't. But if we get 1 goal every 3 games out of him, we're doing quite well, aren't we, Scott?
I think that we would do quite well with those statistics. Eye test, I will say that off the field, he passes, like you said. He's a tall lad. They just put up a post of him hugging Jurgen Klopp, who is quite tall himself, and he was slightly over Jurgen Klopp. So that's impressive to be done right there. He's a tall lad. He's fast. He's strong. Clearly, he's got some intensity in him, which it seems like we're racking up the size right now. If looking at Darwin Nunez and looking at him, I mean, it's looking, just like you said, on face value, formidable. I was able to catch quite a bit of the World Cup this year, and I will say that while the Netherlands group wasn't the best, I also will say that the Netherlands weren't the best, and he was clearly head and shoulders above his teammates in the attacking abilities. And
Literally, apparently.
yeah, literally, exactly. Well, I mean, if he's standing next to Steven Bergwijn, it's really not that difficult now, is it? But the fact is that attacking impetus team like Netherlands, you would expect, a team that also has Memphis Depay on it. Maybe not the 23-year-old to be their shining star, and he was, well, say in the round of 16, he wasn't necessarily the one who got in on the goals. That was Memphis Depay. The reality was he was their outlet time and time again. And for him to be able to kind of light up a stage like the World Cup as he did, and for us to get him at the price that we did, I think is good. He's really good. Now take his stats with PSV. I think this is really good business.
Jamie, to put a little twist on it, if we bring in Gakpo and let's say we're going to go for some midfielder, whether it's Bellingham or Enzo Fernandez or whoever, to bolster the ranks, it would mean in the attack we would have Luis Diaz, Jota, Firmino, Salah, Nunes, Elliott, and Gakpo. Does that indicate that maybe one of Jota or Diaz is not quite close to coming back and may even be one of those injury-prone players that we'll never see again?
It's difficult, isn't it? With those types of players, injuries, constant little injuries can be career defining. You take a look at historically somebody like Owen. Now Jota, I'm not going to liken him to Owen, but if those little instances are constantly coming, then those kind of accusations are going to be leveled at him. What I will say is when he's on form, he's brilliant. We know how electric he was when he came on the scene. I would dare say, Gakpo could potentially be played through the middle. I think I read he was sort of mainly played through the middle for the Dutch, wasn't he?
Yeah.
At the World Cup. So, and again, with the height, it could be. So, it's always good to have a player that can be versatile up front. And we know that the Jota is that player when he's fit and firing. But out to March is what we're hearing, isn't it? So that's very concerning. Now, again, we spent good money on Jota. It was a bargain, and the way it was structured, the pay plan, the way it was structured was good value for money. It's difficult. I think Gakpo's being brought in at a ripe age, with plenty of time to prove what he's worth, and as a player coming into a new squad, that's kind of what you want. You want an opportunity, and if I'm Gakpo and I'm coming in and I'm looking at these guys who are established players that are in the sick bay, I'm licking my lips. I'm thinking of, I'm going to be playing with Salah here. I'm going to be playing with Nunes here. I'm going to get a chance here. And the same goes for Luis Diaz. It's just bad timing. Luis Diaz had the same opportunity. So, we got him in quite quickly, and the business was done quickly when we needed him. It's all good signs. I think, we spotted a weakness, a weak link in Man United, and they were stalling, and we swooped in and done the business. And a team like Liverpool can do that because we are a much more attractive project, and why wouldn't we be? We've won the Premier League, we've won the Champions League, we've won. We were in the line for 4 cups last year. So I think, if the right player's available, and that's kind of what Klopp's always said, if the right player's available, we're in the market for them. So yeah, I think Cody Gakpo's licking his lips and looking at some serious game time once he gets up and running.
Scott, if to put yet another twist for you, it seems that I think you're right. We are actually looking towards the taller type of player. Do you think maybe the sports science department has looked at who's getting injured? Some maybe that are slightly lesser stature players are always in the sick bay, as Jamie says, and maybe they're going for the more physically robust players so we can get more out of them.
That's a really interesting take, and I think that first of all, well done on being one of the first people to bring that up to me, because it's fantastic. I do agree. I think that it's something that is certainly taken into account, the fact that we play such a high intensity, demanding game. And it appears as though the majority of injuries that we have had in the past come from our very fast twitch muscle players, the short, very quick spurts of attacking impetus. There's something to be said on, besides the quality and intricacies of a player, the physical demand of the Premier League. And while we've seen great success with somebody like Luis Diaz, who came in, in January last year, I do hope that the rigors of the Premier League aren't the reason that he's currently injured. Maybe we are looking towards that new kind of standard of player, somebody that's strong, quick, and fast, and long-legged, and maybe a little bit more resilient towards some kind of season-defining injuries. The reality is once these players start getting fit, I think the bigger quality that the team as a whole will have is just the ability to not have to rush in players or not have to force a standard starting 11. I know we all hate in fantasy Premier League pep roulette, right? But I also believe that there is something to be said that the ability to be able to take a winger that maybe is playing fantastic and say, listen, you've played a lot of football recently. You're going to have the next 2.5 weeks of coming off the bench for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then once you get your round into the starting 11, you'll be fresh and raring to go. And the ability to kind of play that physical mixed with mental aptitude to our players and allow them to have the rest and maybe build this burning desire to want to get back on the pitch and do really well, I think is a fantastic thing for our team to have. Because you remember years past, I mean, after our starting 11, what would we have? Now we're looking at some real depth.
Jamie, it almost goes back to the great Gerard Houllier's 3-word philosophy of rotation, which was a huge help to us back in the early 2000s before it was a thing. But we have also discussed about Jurgen Klopp's almost reticence to change a winning team. Do you think he's kind of seen the light now at this point, and he's filling the squad with players that maybe are more physically robust, but it allows those, as Scott says, the fast twitch, muscle fiber, smaller players to recover longer, so we can get more out of them over 38 to 60 something games, whatever it ends up being?
There's definitely a few things to dig in there. I think Klopp uses his subs, but pre 5 substitutions, he used to use his subs very wisely. Around the 80th minute mark, if we were 4-0 up, he'd kill time. He did use them sparingly and almost begrudgingly. It seemed, anyway, to the untrained eye. Now, him being one of the forerunners for the 5 sub rule, he seems to have bought into it a bit more. And again, like I said, a few things to dig into. We now have that depth in squad that Scott was alluding to. Experience mixed with youth on the bench. So, yeah, of course, again, the nature of how we play football, very intense. It does lead itself to injuries. So we do seem to pick up a few throughout the season, and we've all known in seasons past where we've been plagued. So, we're certainly no stranger to it again this year. But it's just having that backup in the right positions with the right mentality and having that mix of youth and experience and your solid 60 game a season players, that don't miss a beat. Your Mane's, your Salah's, but yeah, I think he has kind of bought into the idea that he needs to use his substitutions more, he needs to tinker a wee bit more. But yeah, he begrudgingly so. Why I don't know.
Moving on to tomorrow, talking about rotation, etc., etc. We have a Premier League game against our old manager Brendan Rodgers and his up and down Leicester side. What lineup do you think we're going to see tomorrow, Scott? Are we going to see pretty much what we saw against Villa, or do you think Klopp is going to maybe change a few things around, especially with the players who played in the World Cup?
I think that's a great shout in terms of the players specifically used in the World Cup that also had a lot of minutes. So players specifically in my mind first comes is something like Henderson. Could use a rest or at least come in maybe later in the game. While Naby is fit, do we see a start? Possibly. I also think that it's a fairly good match with him, especially against a midfield, of the Dewsbury Hall and Tielemans. I think these maybe less physically demanding players, someone that Naby would be able to kind of outpace and outlast if, like I said, if he stays fit. Big if Macca, if he stays fit. I don't think that Ox is going to get a start again. I think that if push comes to shove, you can see some sort of change in formation. Maybe, like I said, play a little bit narrower with Salah and Nunez up top and have somebody like a Carvalho or, Elliott come into the center. But listen, these games in the festive period are going to come thick and fast. We are going to have to rotate and use our squad if we want players to stay fit and keep going for the rest of the season, because by no means, we are out of one cup. Great. That we lost 3 extra games. We still have plenty of games coming up in this schedule, and we're going to need every player that we have on the roster.
Jamie, how do you see it going tomorrow in terms of the lineup?
Well, they got hammered, didn't they? As my Geordie friends reminded me. I'm not sure if it's because Newcastle are flying high and doing well, or it's just a yo-yo Leicester that you were kind of pointing at. They could go ultra defensive and play for that low block, which would have troubled me in years gone by, but I think we have the pace and guys in front, especially with our wing backs now. We've seen Trent and Robbo combining for Mo's goal for Villa, and I think if they sit with a low block, I think we're going to tear them apart again, and I think if they play for that low block counter attack, we're just going to open them up, pick them apart. I think look, again, in years gone by, I would be slightly wary of a Leicester team that just got beat 3-0. I'm not so much this year round. I think, and Scott's right again. These end of year games can be fraught with certain sense of danger. That underdog, that any given Sunday type vibe of these winter games, but we're at home. I think we're just going to put them to the sword. I can honestly see it be a high scoring game. They might nick one, but I can see a few goals going in here.
Scott, I mean, you talked about the midfield there. I've watched a lot of Leicester this season. I always watch our ex-managers' teams, even the Roy Hodgson teams after he left us, as much damage as he did, because he was a good coach before us, and he was a good coach after us. He just wasn't a good coach for Liverpool. But for Brendan Rodgers, I mean, the Tielemans, he's a lazy so and so as far as I'm concerned. He has all the talent in the world and none of the work rate. On the other hand, Dewsbury Hall has all the work rate and none of the talent. And they're missing Maddison, who really is the key to that team playing well.
Huge.
It's a huge loss for them. So it really is, as you said, a midfield set up for us to exploit, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And they do have some injury troubles, obviously, like you said, with Maddison out. And I know that Pratt came off in the middle of the game last week. And they have some troubles with maybe their engine room and being an engine. There's definitely a place to exploit. And I think that if we are able to get some of our more between the lines players, someone like a Harvey Elliott, someone like a Naby Keita in there, players that can go in and kind of be a nice foil to Thiago, assuming that fitness is up to stuff for him and he can play 2 games in a row. I think that we should be able to dominate and break the lines through the midfield. And if we are, like Jamie mentioned, our pace up front is just frightening. Though Salah didn't score last week, his 70-yard run that he had from the opposition's attacking corner shows that man can still fly. I mean, and he is a threat. By no means just because he's a few years older than his maybe record season of goals. He's an incredible threat, and I think that maybe our fans have kind of taken him for granted just because we assume that he's always this fantastic goal scorer that he is for us. But man, what a joy for him to just be at the end of these attacks and helping out. And I think that we should definitely appreciate while we can get through this midfield, there's a man putting it in the back of the net, and that's fucking Mo Salah.
He got the first one. He did score.
That's right.
Score.
He did.
Yeah. Just to because I recognize from what you said earlier about the fast twitch muscle fibers, your stuff in that department. So my question then on the Salah thing would be that he is clearly still fast, but does he have the same sprint repeatability that he had a few years ago? Because maybe that 70-yard sprint is the only one he can do within a 15-minute period, whereas before he could probably do 3 or 4. Do you think it's a case that because he has shown to me a slowness in the past year where he would outrun players, and we talked about it, me, Jamie, and Tamuchin, I think it was actually in one of those episodes, about how maybe the positioning of where he was actually hindering what the eye test on his speed. But do you think that, as we saw, he's capable of making those runs, but is he capable of making those runs repeatedly over 90 minutes?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point. So when you look specifically at like a sprint speed is not cardiovascular. It has nothing to do with our endurance. It has everything to do with strength. And obviously the man's absolutely ripped. He still keeps himself in great shape. He takes a lot of care of his body, and he can make sure that he has a top quality sprint speed. When it comes to the longevity or the endurance to do multiple at once, that's when you start getting into kind of how does age affect our players. And surely you can see, obviously you saw it from Messi, 15 minutes. He's maybe running the other, 75 minutes. He's kind of just walking around the field. He's reserving his energy. Salah obviously does way more on the pitch off the ball than maybe Messi does when it comes to defensive responsibility or the formation responsibility. But when it comes to, like you said, the longevity, being able to keep making those sprints, yeah, for sure. I think we are starting to see less of them, but he's fixing that with his quality and his knowledge and his ability to be in the right place at the right time. So maybe we won't see as many 40, 50-yard runs beating 3 men and then slotting one in the back post, but you're going to see his runs off the ball and you're going to see him slotting in tap-ins, because the reality is he's a smart enough player to know where to be, and to have players around him that are able to get him the ball like we do will continue to keep that output going.
Yeah, he has the players around him and Naby Keita, just so we
And
clarify that. Jamie, just a question on just to bring it a little bit back to Leicester. The we know Brendan Rodgers, as you said, they might go into that low block, but we also know that Brendan Rodgers likes to play an expansive possession game. But he also has a record of, when times are going bad, of pulling results out against top teams. Like he's beaten City, he's beaten us, he's beaten Arsenal. You know, when he needs a result, he seems to get one. Do you think that's possible tomorrow, or do you think that the progress of Leicester is so damaged by that break after they had that nice run before the World Cup that they're almost effectively starting again?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult for them. They're coming to our home. We are going to make it difficult for them, and I think, you know, that break can it kind of happened at a good time for us. Maybe not for Darwin Núñez and certain other players, but for players like Mo Salah. And just one word on the whole Mo Salah sprinting thing. I was reading an article about sprinters and how it's called the 85% rule. How the 85% rule can work for anything, basically. And it basically, the idea is that if you're a sprinter and you try to run your hardest 100%, inevitably you're always going to fall short. But if you run at 85%, more often than not, sprinters like Usain Bolt use this idea, this principle, that if you do everything at 85%, it's almost effortless, and you inevitably run faster and harder at 85% than you would at 100%. And I think that kind of works well with Liverpool as a whole. You know, we obviously we give 100%, but sometimes we do make it look effortless. And I think that's kind of what Mo Salah does as well. But he's also, look, we'll get on to, I'll finish off with Leicester. I think, yes, the break did come at a great time for us. And I think they are going to have to start again. And they're missing, like you said, they're missing Madison. Their break didn't necessarily work well. And look, Newcastle made them look horrible. So they're having to start again up against us, and that's a big ask coming to Anfield this time of year when the Scousers are going to be out in force, out for a party, and Brendan Rodgers is coming to town under the gun. So look, the pressure's all on them, and I think they're going to want to try and operate at 100%. And I think they're going to fall very short. Whereas I think we can probably get away with operating at 85% and ending up with a much better result than a lot of other teams.
Just a quick question for Scott, just to expand on Jamie's excellent point there about the 85% rule. Mm-hmm. You talked about Messi there, and it always seemed to me, even at Barcelona, even under Pep, that Messi had a lot more leeway to not have to pressure the ball when they lost the ball, and definitely now he almost like Cristiano Ronaldo. They're there to put the ball in the back of the net or assist somebody else. Don't worry about the defending aspect. Almost like old school 70s football. Those guys up the front, they just put the ball in the net. The rest of us will do the rest, the donkey work, so to speak. But for us, our players do go at 85% constantly. There's never a rest period almost for them, except for when the ball goes out of play. Do you think that might be, just trying to go right back full circle to the start, to Darwin Núñez and all that? Do you think maybe part of our battle with those new players is to get them to stop doing 100%? Because if they're pressing at 100%, they now have to, they've now got a depleted tank when we do get the ball, and maybe part of the battle of the system, so to speak, is not tactical, but that idea of go 85%, then you'll have 85% when we get the ball, and we'll have 85% when we have to win it back again, etc., etc.
Yeah, Maga, that's a really great point. I think that you're incredibly right. I think that when we get a new player, and obviously they want to impress the new team, they want to impress the gaffer, and the reality is they're going to try their damnedest and make sure that the result comes out positive for them so they can stay on the field as much as they can. Maybe we are seeing a little bit of, I hate the term trying too hard, right? Can you believe trying too hard? There's a reason these players got to Liverpool. There's a reason that we signed them. They clearly did well enough wherever they came from their respective former teams. And I think that there's something to be said that when they were on those teams, like Jamie said, it's effortless. They made it look easy. And by no means is wherever they came from easy. By no means were they not trying. But the reality is you need to play smart. And playing smart is, like you said, being able to say, keep your fitness to have to not be a passenger, to run in defense, to break down, lines, to pressure an outside back, something that, as Jurgen Klopp demands from his teams, we do, so we can get the ball and then still have enough foundation, have enough intensity to put the ball in the back of the net. And who knows, maybe we just broke the code. We figured out why it takes so long for new signings to bed in. Maybe he's trying to, hold him back and say, whoa, donkey, go slow the fuck down,
It's almost like horse racing, isn't it, Jamie? You get those young horses that are trying to run faster than every other horse. Sometimes you need that jockey to pull the reins a little bit.
Yep, save a little in the tank for the last few furlongs. I think that's a decent analogy there. I think,
and it would have to be from an Irishman.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think, yeah, no, the luck of the Irish isn't a good thing, folks, especially when it comes to betting on horses. No, I think it's a great analogy because we are into this is the final stretch, and I know, look, it's Christmas time. And they've always said, you can't win the league by Christmas, but you can certainly lose it. And we may not be in the title race, as they say, as the media always like to spin out this bullshit cliche, in the title race, especially at this time of year, because it seems to be getting closer and closer to the start of the season, where we talk about, oh, the title race is heating up. The title race is heating up. It's fucking Christmas. Calm down, we are nearing now. It'll be full throttle to the end of the season. I think there will be a few international breaks still, but there's going to be a game every couple of days now, and it's mad. It is heating up, especially now. World Cup's over. Everybody's home from their breaks. It's focus time, and I think all these things that we've been talking about, keeping some in the tank, the 85% rule, keeping that 15 in the tank so you can replenish and go again. I think it's all geared towards, it is a fresh start, just as it is for Leicester, as it is for everyone. It's another bite at the cherry. And if we can get form going, open up into the new year, I think, we can start to regain some ground, because by no means have we lost the league. I mean, we may have lost the war, but there's still plenty of ground to gain.
Yeah.
There's still,
and Arsenal will always Arsenal.
Right. There's so much left in the tank of the actual season. So, anything can and will happen. And we just need to start progressing up that table. And it would be nice if Newcastle and Arsenal started slipping up.
Just to nail our colours to the mast, Scott, what's your score prediction for tomorrow?
I'm saying it's a repeat of Boxing Day of last year. We're going to 4-0.
Jamie, what do you say?
That sounds tasty. But they're probably going to grab one. Let's be honest. I'll go. Let's go for a mad 4-2.
I'm going to go 6-1 because they will score possibly something. But I do think their defense. It's a Brendan Rodgers defense, and I love Brendan Rodgers to bits, but you can't.
It's a Danny Ward goal.
It's got to be. He's actually improved, to be fair to him, but he didn't have much to improve on. So, with the lower you start, the higher the leaps look.
That's right.
But yeah, so my call is 6-1. Now we may not have had a 60-second Jamie news, but we are going to have our threshold question. So, Scott. Actually, I'll start with Jamie because he's had one of these before. So we talked about Nunez's hair and Bobby's teeth earlier on. So the
Did I steal your line? Did I steal your line?
No. But I
Can you imagine?
Would you rather have, Jamie, Bobby Charlton's hair or Nobby Styles' teeth?
Oh. Do you know what? I kind of already do have Bobby Charlton's hair. It's going for that Mane down the side.
That's
look,
right.
So
It's gonna be back behind the earlobe soon.
yeah, it's because I'm walking too fast, Scott.
That's what it is.
Well, I must
So
have
I
been
guess-
sprinting then.
Yeah. So I guess fuck it, I'll go for Nobby Styles teeth then.
Scott, what's your pick?
Oh, we're going with the hair. I haven't had hair in years. We're going. It doesn't matter if it looks bad. It's just going to be something on the top of my head.
Yeah, I think I would go for Bobby Charlton's hair as well, simply because I could do wonders with a comb over. But I can't eat an apple without
Shall I wear it to the left or to the right?
It depends on the wind's direction that day.
or in a circle.
That's right.
Like the top of a muffin, which the shape of me would make me look like a muffin. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining tonight. Enjoy the game tomorrow, and especially for the new young Liverpool fan. Hopefully, she gets a great result for it. And also, Happy New Year to you both. And we will see everybody next Thursday. And we have the EPL Fantasy shows being it will be uploaded as well by the time this is out. And we'll have the Monday podcast as usual on Monday, and then also the morning coffee show in the morning. So make sure you like, subscribe, or else we'll go to your house and beat you up. We're the gang. And right. Then make sure you listen to us on Spotify as well. And we will see everybody next week. Take care. Peace out.
Happy New Year.
Up the Reds.